Hi there! Welcome to History in Retrograde. This is the podcast where we use the ancient art of astrology to help us better understand the past. I'm your co-host, Chandler O'Quinn, and joining me live via satellite is my mom. Hi, Mom!
Hi, Chandler! How are you?
I'm doing fine. Are you ready to begin another grand experiment?
Absolutely, I'm very ready.
Alright, let's give it a whirl.
Okay, and I'd also like to just say thank you to all of our listeners all over the world in all 4 continents who are listening to us and helping us grow this little show.
Yes, welcome back to those of you who are listening to us again. It is, again, very, couldn't believe that our little operation here would be heard in 4 continents and growing. So thank you all so much for listening. And for those of you, if this is your first episode, the way that the podcast works is that in a moment, I will give the astrological birth data of a random historical figure to my mother so that she can create an astrological birth chart. Now you, the listening audience, already know who this historical figure is. It's in the title of today's episode. I, of course, know who it is because I selected this person, but Mom has no idea who this person might be. So I will give her the birth date, time, and location of our mystery history guest. She will input that into the Bat computer, and out will come the astrological birth chart, where all the stars, planets, and moons were at the moment that person was born. She will then give us an initial reading, giving us the character traits, personality, fortunes of this person. I will then reveal who this mystery history guest is, give a little background about the person, and we will discuss how accurate the chart was at predicting who this person would be. So without further ado, let's begin.
Okay.
This is going to be a male.
All right.
Born on the 4th of July, 1872.
Oh. All right. Do we have a time?
I was able to find a time, as always with this. I'm not exactly sure where they're getting this from, but we're going to go ahead and roll with it. 9 a.m.
9 a.m. 9 o'clock. All right. And where?
Plymouth Notch, Vermont. Oh, the United States. I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the United States. And Plymouth Notch.
Is that 2 words?
Yes. Vermont.
I don't see this yet. Here's Plymouth, Vermont. Should we go with that one?
I guess so.
Okay. All right.
So again, this is a male born on the 4th of July, 1872 at 9 o'clock in the morning, Plymouth Notch, Vermont, regardless of what our program allows us to say.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Ugh. This is always so amazing when I see these charts. Wow. Okay. My goodness gracious. All right. Well, I'm going to say that if this person is not in show business, they miss their calling.
Yeah, no, wow. Okay, that is...
they really miss their calling.
I don't think anyone has ever said that, but wow, okay.
Okay, so, here's the thing. This person has Virgo rising at 5 degrees, okay? But that puts Leo on their 12th house, right? Which means they have karma with things that are Leo, like show business and children and leadership, things like that. Even though this person doesn't have, anything in this 12th house, they do have Jupiter in Leo, which would also, and it's in the 11th house, which gives them great benevolence with leading groups of people. Okay. See, because they have all of see this concentration here in the 11th house of all these planets.
Yes.
With Venus and Sun and Mercury and Uranus and Jupiter. All right. So that is a huge amount of planets in the 11th house dealing with the people. All right. Dealing with groups of people. And I would say leading groups of people or performing for groups of people. Huge deal. All right. Then in their 10th house, they have North Node, Moon, and Mars in their 10th house. All right. I'm just kind of give an overview, then I'll go back and say, what these things are. But Pluto in Taurus in the 9th house, a little bit dogmatic, I think. And then 8th house has Neptune and Chiron in Aries. Oh, this is a lot. But that 5th house with Saturn in Capricorn in the 5th house, that's the business. It could be the business of leadership, but Saturn is, lessons with, this would be Saturn in Capricorn in the 5th house. So it's lessons with show business, with leadership, could be leadership. But everything is very concentrated in 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. Every planet they have is in either the 8th, 9th, 10th, or 11th houses, except for this Saturn in the 5th house. Okay. So, first of all, having Virgo rising, anytime you're dealing with Virgonian things, you're dealing with, like the physical communication process. Virgos want to be the best. They want to be the person who fixes it, like who organizes it and does the work that makes people happy. They really want to do the best work to make people happy. That's what they want to do. So this person has Virgo ascending, and so I would assume that this person was possibly, very quick, very smart. Could be very witty. Okay. And then there's nothing in the 2nd house, but it's ruled by Libra. So this person would have really loved, beautiful Venusian things, very opulent. Not in a fiery way, in an airy way, in a Libra way. So really pretty, elegant. Fire signs tend to like things that are royal, at least Leos and Aries do, but Sagittarians, they like, I don't know, animal heads on the wall. I don't know. That's not true. They really do like opulent things, but Sag is so earthy. Okay. And then Scorpio in the 3rd house, but no planets in there. Sagittarius in the 4th house. Earthy would have made them kind of, like to be out away for their home. Enjoy staying in places that were kind of rustic. Then with this 5th house is Capricorn, Saturn and Capricorn in the 5th house, which is what I was saying before. It's lessons with possibly control in something that has to do with Leo things, leadership, children, entertainment of some sort. 6th house is Aquarius. 7th house is Pisces. 8th house. 8th house has Neptune and Chiron in Aries. 8th house, with that Chiron in Aries, there could have been a loss early on of someone in their life that they had to recover from, because it's 8th house, which is death and rebirth and legacies and sexual behavior, everything Scorpio, which is ruled by Pluto. So a lot of fiery legacy power issues. But Neptune is there, so that would make it creative, but in a way that is very driven creatively. Then go to the 9th house.
So, just to clarify, you're saying that this person would have issues with legacy, but be able to creatively overcome that?
Well, when you have Chiron, it's the wounded healer. So the best case scenario with Chiron is you have this karma, whatever it is, karma with death or power or something that is Plutonian, right? Death and rebirth, power, sexuality, dark magic, dark magic maybe, things like this. And this person has it in Aries. So having Neptune conjunct Chiron in the 8th house in Aries would be wounded healer regarding the 8th house, and possibly also creativity, because Neptune is dreams and psychic ability and all that. So it's like a double dose of intuitiveness, dreaminess, illusion, creativity. Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. Maybe when we put it all together, it'll make sense. I'll have a better understanding. Yeah. But then 9th house has, unless we have the wrong time of birth, which might also be a problem. But per this, having Pluto and Taurus in the 9th house would make this person a very powerful, very stubborn philosopher. Very driven, powerful, because Taurus is very stubborn, right? Once a Taurus sets their course, they're not changing. It would take an explosion to get them to change, and they don't have Uranus in this house. So whatever this person would decide to do, doesn't matter what, nothing would stop them from going towards that. And it has to do with their own dogma, their own religion, their own philosophies, travel, teaching, learning, all of those Sagittarian things. Okay. Nature, all of those things. All right. Then we have Gemini in the midheaven, which would make them a very good communicator. Okay. And North Node in Gemini in the 10th house conjunct Moon at that 29 degrees. So when you have Moon at 20, anything, like I've said every time, at 29 degrees is there could be there could be some sorrow involved with that.
And the Moon is also connected to the mother, right?
And women. It can be mother, women, sisters, women in your life, but most importantly, the mother. So having Moon in the 10th house, somehow female nurturing energy is connected to this person's career and how they do their career. Their career also they're very emotional about their career. Their emotions are somehow connected to their career. And almost like wherever the Moon is a need for nurturing, a great love of love. Does that make sense? In their career. So somehow their career if they, I'm assuming they were very successful and that maybe people love them. But it is emotional. So also we have Mars at 0 degrees Cancer, which makes their direction in their career nurturing. So that's like having Moon and Mars in Cancer. You know what I mean? Like their Moon is in Gemini, right? It's at 29 degrees, which is also on the cusp of Cancer. So you can go 5 degrees one way or the other, right? So if you go 5 degrees into Gemini or go 5 degrees into Cancer, so that this person has Moon and Mars in a very interesting space for their career, because they can have aspects of both. Moon in Gemini also makes this person very cerebral about how they deal with their emotions. Like a person who would, if an emotional situation comes up, they're going to need to talk about it, and probably talk about it a lot, and decipher it through that. You decipher those emotions through communication. I don't know if that makes any sense. But their direction, also being 0 degrees Cancer, has a lot to do with communication, but also nurturing. Then we move to the next house, which has Venus at 9 degrees Cancer, which would mean that this person should have been loved by the public. Wherever Venus is what you love, but it is also, for a man, it's the kind of woman he loves. And this Venus is in Cancer, so he would have loved a very nurturing, or should have loved a very nurturing kind of woman. This person also has Sun in Cancer, which is very nurturing. And I don't know. I would think that this person was maybe funny. This person might have been funny. Cancers can be very funny. Most people see them as more like emotional, but they can be very, very funny. Comedians, you know, comedic. Then we have Mercury, also in Cancer, which would, again, I mean, I feel like this person was funny. I don't know. And then Uranus in Leo. Uranus at 0 degrees Leo with that Jupiter. I cannot imagine, is this person not in show business? Because they have all this stuff in the 11th house that makes them funny and lovable and all these things. So I don't know what I've hit on. That 8th house, that Chiron and Neptune in Aries would give them great creative direction. You know what I mean? Like they could just plow through the direction they want to go creatively. I don't know. Does any of this make any sense?
Yeah, a lot of it makes sense. I think given your natural tendencies towards children and show business, you naturally go towards those first, where the leader part of Leo is much more what this person did. But everything makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Well, I mean, Saturn is, lessons. It's what you have to learn. It's what you're meant to learn. So if this person was a leader, then they do have Saturn in the 5th house, which is ruled by Leo, which is leadership. So they would have had to learn to be a leader. They have Saturn in Capricorn, which is also business type of leadership and economic, but it's also all of the, like politics and control. It's all the things that control us, like in any things that are ruled by Capricorn are politics and laws and government, dogma and all these things where man wants to put control on something. So I don't know. Do you have any questions?
Yeah. So you mentioned how this person would be a skilled communicator, maybe even witty and funny. Now, there's a lot of different types of communication. There's the way that you would address a whole group of people, and then there's the way that you conduct yourself in a one-on-one conversation. Can you tell anything about either of those? How this person would address a group of people, or how this person would conduct themselves in a more intimate conversation?
Well, uh, they have a sign change in the 11th house. So most of their 11th house is ruled by Cancer. Okay. And with that, they have Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars all in Cancer. Okay. Then they have Uranus and Jupiter in Leo. So, I mean, there can be a very serious side to Cancer with those Leo aspects, a very, you know, strong, nurturing leader aspect. I would think, I just keep getting that this person had a sense of humor, like a good sense of humor. I don't know why, but that's what I'm feeling from this, is that this person had, like this person could be really serious, but at the same time seem to have a handle on things. And even unexpected things, somehow they could get a handle on it, or somehow ground it with it. I don't know. But I would think that this person was well respected by groups of people. And that groups of people who, would hear communications from this person would feel that they were being taken care of, nurtured somehow. And possibly in private, this person was more comedic. But I think this person could be light in any situation that they wanted to, because of the way these planets are lining up and the way that they are placed in the houses. But I would say this person was a nurturing leader and very driven, like legacy driven. Like this person was going to change whatever it is they're working on. And that nothing could stop them because they were set on their path. Like they had taken this yoke on and they were an ox and they were just going to keep moving. Nothing was going to stop them. They're too big. You can't stop them. They're going to plod along towards whatever it is. Is that making sense?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
What is this person's relationship to power? How would they wield it?
Well, their Pluto in the 9th house in Taurus. It's like if you imagine a giant ox, like huge, like this, bigger than Godzilla, moving towards whatever goal they have. There isn't anything that can really stop them. They're just going to keep going. You can't stop them. So they set a course and then they just keep going until they get to where it is. They have this Neptune and Chiron and Aries, but they have all this Cancer and Capricorn, and Taurus. There's a lot of earth and water. So I would think that they just you couldn't stop them. They would just move at whatever pace they set towards the goal they were going to reach.
Okay.
They do have that Gemini, though. I mean, in the 10th house, they have the availability of that North Node, so they can be very quick. They have Virgo rising and they've got Gemini in the 10th house. So I would think this is a very smart person.
Do you get any sense of what kind of father he would be?
Well, this person has Sun in Cancer. So I would think they would be a nurturing father. But they're very busy, you know. They have Sun in the 11th house, so it's possible they were very busy and didn't have as much time as they might have wanted to spend with their children, maybe.
Right.
Because they're very busy in the public. They are extremely busy. And they have Saturn in the 5th house, which would be also lessons with children and maybe could have even been strict with the children, like Saturn, like trying to teach them, sometimes maybe too harshly.
Now, we've kind of covered a little bit of this before, but I'll just ask the questions directly and we'll see if there's any more insight you can get of what kind of person would this person be attracted to in a romantic partner?
Well, they have Venus in Cancer. So they would kind of be attracted to a person that's kind of like them, I would think, because they have Sun conjunct Venus. Okay. So their Sun is at 12 degrees and their Venus is at 9 degrees. So that's within 5 degrees. So it's within the orb of conjunction. So I would think that they would want someone similar to them, similar in their nurturing, similar in also in the public eye, because they're in the public all the time. I would think this person is in the public all the time.
Okay. That's interesting. I think there's most people would say that this person was very much the opposite of their wife. But there's a lot of things from this chart that I think I can, once I reveal who it is and do everything, I think at the end we can come to terms with all this, because there's a lot of things that are spot on. There's a few things that maybe this guy was playing 4D chess with everybody and was making us all think one thing while he was actually doing another.
Well, that's very possible because this person has Gemini on the 10th house, so they could be 4 steps ahead of anybody. But also, they have Moon at 29 degrees Gemini, so and in the 10th house. So they might have wanted a career woman, you know. Venus and the Moon are going to be your signs for a heterosexual male, what they're looking for in a woman. And Venus being more so than Moon, because Moon is more mother. So, but this person has Venus in Cancer, which would give a very nurturing, motherly kind of woman.
Right.
You know, a loving, moonish woman, you know.
Well, are there any other insights that you can get from the chart that you haven't already talked about?
I think also, if we also are looking at a partner, he doesn't have anything in the 7th house, but he has Pisces ruling the 7th house. So it's possible that he could want a partner that was more creative. I mean, there's a lot of different things to look at in every chart that can make it sound like you're saying, well, it could be this, but it could be that, but it could be this, but it could be that. And that's true, because all of the things that are in anyone's chart are simply the photograph of where the planets were at the time they were born. You know, it doesn't necessarily show you, you know, what other aspects intercede into creating that person. So I can only describe what the different aspects might be. You know, I could tell you for sure, you know, that this person wouldn't want, you know, an Aquarian type of woman, because they don't have any aspects that show that, you know. So, yeah, I think, you know, this person's North Node in the 10th house was that they were communicating. Somehow they were meant to communicate in their career. And I would not try to stop them, because I don't think you could ever try to stop them. Once they set their mind to something, they were going to do it. And very creative with how they go about that. with their drive, but definitely karma with leadership with that Leo in the 12th house.
Mm-hmm.
But no planets in there, but still. Yeah.
All
So,
right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think are we ready for our summary?
Uh-huh.
All right. So, first thing you said was this man was destined for show business, but I think that we've massaged that to be Leo things, which includes leadership. Karma with leadership, benevolence with leading, and benevolence with the people, leading groups of people, dogmatic, lessons with leadership. Wants to be a person who fixes, who organizes, and who makes people happy. Very smart, very witty. Would maybe want elegant things. Would also enjoy rustic things. Lessons with control and leadership. There's a loss early in his life. Powerful, stubborn philosopher. Very good communicator. A possible sorrow with the mother. A mother connected to the career, an emotional connection to the career. Love and nurture. People would love this man. Direction is nurturing. The direction of his life is nurturing people. There is a cerebral aspect in the way that he deals with emotions. Loved by the public. Loved a nurturing woman. Might have been very funny. Business leadership and economics. Very serious, but would have a handle on things. Driven by legacy. Nothing could stop them. They would be a nurturing father, but they could be harsh or strict with the children. A partner, their romantic partner, would be similar to them, have a similar position in front of groups of people, and could possibly want a career woman. Is there anything that I left out?
Yes, I just want to tweak the part where you said might like rustic things. It's not that they would necessarily like rustic things. They would want to live in nature.
Okay.
Like they would prefer to be out in the mountains as opposed to be in the city.
Right.
Like they would prefer that. And then also where the women are concerned, I can't remember what you said about that, but oh well, it went away. It was something about the women. Can you tell me what you said about the women?
Loved a nurturing woman.
Mm-hmm.
A partner that was similar to them and was similarly in front of people and might want a career woman.
Right, because it could be oh, I know what it was. It was the North Node. The North Node in Gemini is the aspect that is what the direction they should be going. The direction they went is for the career. Uh-huh. Their direction was career in communications, but they had their sun is in Cancer, which makes them nurturing and with the people.
Okay.
Just to clarify that.
Okay. Would you like to know whose chart you've been looking at?
Yes.
This is the astrological birth chart of the 30th President of the United States, Calvin Coolidge.
Oh my, okay.
Calvin Coolidge was born John Calvin Coolidge Jr. on the 4th of July, 1872, in Plymouth Notch, Vermont. He was born to John Calvin Coolidge Sr. and Victoria Josephine Moore. The people who settled in Plymouth Notch, Vermont are called the people who stayed, because many of the people arriving to this little town in Vermont realized that the soil was absolutely wretched for trying to farm on it. It was very hilly and very rocky and was not suitable to any sort of growth, and so most of the people were smart and they moved away. They moved to the west. That was not so with Coolidge's family. They stayed in Plymouth Notch, and they tried to eke out a living on this rocky, poor soil. It was also a town that was bypassed by the railroad, so it was isolated and not connected to really the rest of society. His father was a local store owner, and he was also a local politician. Um, his mother died of tuberculosis when Calvin was just 15 years old.
Oh my.
3 years later, his younger sister died of appendicitis. Coolidge attended the Black River Academy and just got out by the skin of his teeth and got into Amherst College. He was a very shy student, very subdued, did not like speaking up in public. But during his time at Amherst, he was coaxed out of his shell by Professor Charles Garman, and eventually was able to perform well in debates and to stand up in front of groups of people. After graduation from Amherst, he studied law, and he crossed the river into Massachusetts, into Northampton, Massachusetts. He passed the bar, he became a lawyer, and he opened his own practice in Northampton in 1898. In 1903, he met a woman named Grace Goodhue. And the way one of the stories goes is that Calvin Coolidge was up one morning. He was shaving. He only had on his union suit, his underwear, while he was getting ready this morning and shaving by the window. And he would wear a bowler hat while he was shaving so that his curls on his head did not get into his eyes. And so there's this man who is shaving, wearing his underwear and a bowler hat, and this young woman happens to walk by and thinks that this is a very funny sight. And they exchanged words, and from that point on, Calvin knew that that was the woman that he wanted to marry. And that was Grace Goodhue. She was a teacher at the local school for deaf children. They were married shortly thereafter, and Calvin Coolidge began his steady rise through local politics. He was in the Republican Party. He was first a city councilman. He was then a solicitor. He was a clerk of the courts, then was elected to the Massachusetts House of Representatives, then went back to becoming mayor of Northampton. Then he went to the state senate, was the president of the senate, lieutenant governor, and governor. He achieved all of this by the age of 46 years old.
Wow.
Right. He won governor of Massachusetts by one of the smallest margins in at least his history of elections. It was just by a few thousand votes. As governor, Coolidge was very much a dogmatic person, as bears out in the chart. He wanted to make sure that he followed the law. There's one story that says that while the governor was out on a car ride, the bodyguard was driving the car, and he had there were sirens that would be on this motorcade. And they reached a stop sign, and the bodyguard turned on the sirens and just blew right past the stop sign. Calvin Coolidge pulled the man aside and said, "That is not how I want you to do things. The governor should be the first person who follows the law, not the last."
That's very nice. Yes, that's lovely.
During his first term as governor, he got national acclaim for the Boston police strike. So the Boston police force, they had justified grievances. They were not being given the wages that they were due for the hours that they were putting in. There are stories of the mice in the police stations were eating the leather on the caps of the policemen. So did not have enough money to take care of themselves. So the policemen, they went on strike. They tried to join the American Federation of Labor. when they did this, though, Boston went into chaos because there were no more policemen. So crime went up, there were riots, there was looting. Eventually, Governor Coolidge had to call in the state militia to try and maintain order. He wrote a very famous telegram to the person in charge of the Union, the American Federation of Labor. He is also one of the greatest names of American history, a man named Samuel Gompers. Coolidge wrote to Gompers that there is no right to strike against the public safety by anyone, anywhere, anytime. And he fired all of those police officers and had to get new ones to come in. He was convinced that his political career was over after doing this, but he saw that this was the only way to have order in the city. This gave him a national, he became a national celebrity overnight for having done this. And not only did he win re-election, he won re-election as governor by the largest margin in Massachusetts history up to that time.
Wow.
In 1920, talk of the presidential race and this new national celebrity, Calvin Coolidge, governor of Massachusetts. People were naturally taking a look at this young man. And it was all set up for him he could have walked away with the nomination, except that the senator from his own state, a man named Henry Cabot Lodge, he was from Boston. And the people in Boston turned their noses up at the people from Western Massachusetts. That's the boonies. So they were not going, he did not like Calvin Coolidge, and so he stopped his support of his local governor from being the nominee, and instead Warren Harding was nominated as the presidential candidate, and Calvin Coolidge was selected as the vice president. These two men, Warren Harding and Calvin Coolidge, could not have been farther apart in the way that they led their lives. Warren Harding was certainly the president of the 20s. He was a man who did not care about this new prohibition law. Once he was president, he willingly served liquor in the White House, stayed up way into the wee hours of the morning playing poker games, using presidential sets of china. There's one story that says that one of the presidential sets of china was gambled away in a poker game. There are stories of all sorts of extramarital affairs and all sorts of corruption with Warren Harding. Calvin Coolidge was very much by the book, by the law, following everything that he believed was right. And it is during this time that Coolidge was given the nickname Silent Cal. It was said that at all of these dinners, and whether they were wild or not, he just would say just a few words at these parties. In fact, there is this famous story, which we now are not exactly sure if it's true, but it so much speaks to the man that I have to tell it anyway, that Calvin Coolidge sat down to one of these society dinners, and there was this young socialite, this young woman who was very pretentious, and said, Mr. Vice President, I've placed a $5 bet that I can get you to say more than 2 words tonight. And Coolidge looked at her and said, "You lose," and didn't say anything for the rest of the night.
Yeah, I think that's that Pluto in Taurus in the 9th house. Oh boy. Yep.
Harding maintained his rather raucous presidency through 21, 22, 23. In the summer of 1923, Harding decided to go on a whirlwind trip to the western states. He took a train out to California and had plans to board a ship to go to Alaska. He arrived in San Francisco and went to the hotel. On the night of August 2nd, 1923, the Coolidges were back at home in Plymouth Notch, Vermont. And in the wee hours of the morning, around 2 o'clock in the morning, on August 3rd, 1923, there was a knock at the door. It was the man from the telegram office. Warren Harding had passed away. At 2:43 a.m., Calvin Coolidge's father, on the only authority being that he was a notary public, gave Calvin Coolidge the oath of office, making Coolidge the 30th president of the United States. There was no electricity in the house, so they were doing this by kerosene lamp. And this vision of the President of the United States, arguably at this time one of the most powerful men in the world, assuming this office by lamplight, by an oath given by his own father, was an image that completely characterized this man's presidency. Again, Coolidge very much the opposite of Harding. His first mode of business was to clean up the administration, make sure that the Senate investigation to all of Harding's ill doings got all of the bad people in the administration out of office. And this is the 1920s. So you think of the roaring 20s, you think of the booming economy. Calvin Coolidge, notably, one of his greatest quotes said that the chief business of the American people is business. He won a stunning re-election victory in 1924. He, in fact, won. It was a three-way race, and he won more votes than any of the two opponents. He talked. This is, the 1920s. This is the time of laissez-faire capitalism, getting the government out of the way of business. He made sure that the tax rate on the wealthiest of Americans went down from 50% to 25%. And revenue for the government rose, even though the tax rate had gone down. Unemployment went from 6% to 3%. Now, this is a whole bunch of economics jargon, and I would, make sure that everyone who's listening to this, you must consult your family economists before deciding if laissez-faire capitalism is right for you. But I think that the greatest impact that all of this had on everyone's regular lives is the creation of Saturday. Up until the 1920s, people worked 6 days a week. But because of the amount of capital that was being created and the amount of funds that were being created by all of these businesses, the businesses realized that they could get the same amount of profit whether people worked on Saturday or not. And so, people got a full weekend, 2 full days to themselves. I think and that really happened because of the things that Coolidge did in his administration. Now, again, this is the 1920s, so what's right around the corner is the Great Depression, the stock market crash, and again, your local economist can tell you how much Coolidge's administration had an effect on that. But during the 1920s, the Coolidges were known not for having the same sort of raucous parties that the Hardings were used to, but were still good entertainers. Grace was very much seen as a grand host, the opposite of Silent Cal. She was elegant and was gregarious with everyone, and hosted all of the greatest movie stars and entertainers of the 1920s. All could come to the White House. There's this story that the White House painter was painting a portrait of Grace, and in it she wears this stunning red dress. And the portrait has her standing up in this elegant 20s red dress and has their dog standing by her feet. And Calvin Coolidge looks at the portrait and says, well, it's very nice, but why does the dress have to be red? That is such a bold color. I'm not sure if it's exactly fitting for the First Lady. And the artist said, well, it has to stand off from the dog. The dog is white, so she can't be wearing a white dress. And Coolidge goes, well, I would have preferred the dog be red than the wife wear a red dress. So I've gone a little bit out of order with all this, but one of the things that really marked the Coolidge administration was a sad turn of events that happened while he was running for re-election in 1924. His son, Calvin Coolidge, was coming home from school and was playing tennis with the local doctor and his other brother. And while he was playing tennis, he developed a blister on his toe. The blister became infected. And in 1924, there was no penicillin. All they could do was to wait out and see what would happen. After 10 days of over 100-degree fever, the boy passed away. I think it is just so striking that this is less than 100 years ago. And they did not have the medical care to take care of... A boy could die from a blister on his toe. In less than 100 years, we've come all this way in medical advances. It's truly amazing. This had a profound impact on Coolidge. Really, the zest for his political life and the zest for life in general was completely drained from him. He blamed himself for the son's passing. He said that he's not exactly sure what would have happened if he would have never run for president, but he knew for sure that if he had never sought political office, if he had never been so ambitious to take all of these different government jobs, that they wouldn't have been at the White House, and there wouldn't have been a tennis court, and his son would not have died from that blister. So he lived with that for the rest of his life. And eventually decided in 1928 not to run for president. All of the political experts knew that if Coolidge had run again for re-election, he would have won by one of the largest landslides in American history. The American people absolutely loved Calvin Coolidge. But he decided to walk away and return to Plymouth Notch. All the people who supported Coolidge, all of the big Wall Street donors, all of the people from around the country, well, this was the time of, we're going to make a presidential library for this man that we love so much. So they got millions of dollars, which, if you think about it, today, millions really meant a whole lot of money back then. And they got all these millions, and they gave it to Calvin Coolidge, wanted him to create this presidential library. And he turned around and he said, no, I'm not going to have a presidential library. I'm instead going to give it to my wife so that she can create a foundation for the education of deaf children.
Oh.
And that's exactly what she did. He made sure that she was taken care of and would have something to work on for the rest of her life, because he knew that his own life was coming to an end. He suffered from health problems all throughout his life. And just a few years after he left office, at the age of 60, he passed away in January of 1933. In his clothes, they found a locket, and in the locket was a picture of his mother. He had carried that with him for his whole life. During important times in his life, he would go back to the family cemetery and go to the grave of his mother. And he is buried very close to her in the family plot. And the only thing that people will go there and will oftentimes miss the headstone because it looks just like all the others. The only thing that connotes it from being a president is that there is a presidential seal at the top of the headstone. Other than that, it is the same size and the same design as everyone else in that same cemetery. So that is the life of President Calvin Coolidge. I think that the chart bears it out very well, and we definitely know about his wit and the funny things that he said, but talking about show business, there's a theory that says that all of the silent cow, all of the reservedness, all of the seriousness was an act, that it wasn't his natural self, but it's what he knew that the American people wanted out of their president. And so he acted like that in order to ensure that the people felt better about their leader. And I think that maybe that's what kind of explains everything, is that maybe he was very much like his wife and very gregarious in some ways, but he was acting as someone who was much more serious and much more reserved.
Well, they were clearly both very nurturing people. And so it's very interesting, to realize who he was and how he behaved, because cancers can also be very shy. They can also go, just they have a shell. So that's very interesting. And it's also very interesting in that it makes me sad every time I see that 29 degrees somewhere, because it just shows up as the degree of sorrow so often. And having that 29 degrees moon in the 10th house, but also to know that he went, that so much of his career was wrapped up in him, communicating with his mother who had crossed over,
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. And that Saturn in the 5th house, lessons with children, lessons with leadership. Interesting, very, very interesting. But and then Pluto and Taurus in the 9th house, very stubborn about, doing things properly, doing things by the law, doing things that way. That makes a lot of sense. And it does make sense for him to have been in love with the wife who was, also in front of the, she was very nurturing to groups as well. And ended up with a legacy of being nurturing to groups, to deaf children.
Mm-hmm.
So it's beautiful. It's very beautiful.
Well, are there any other things that make more sense now that you know who it is?
Well, it does make sense when I can work it out and go, oh, okay. Well, having Jupiter in Leo, he did have a lot of luck with his leadership, and yeah, I mean, it's just really clear. It isn't a chart that is extravagant or anything like that. It's just very it's not really simple, but it is pretty cut and dried, when you see it and you see, okay, well, the people would have loved him, and he was clearly a very good, proper leader,
Mm.
Yeah, very good man.
Well, on our scale of right on the money to way out in outer space, I think this is another one right on the money.
Yay!
This concludes this episode of History in Retrograde. We'd like to thank you so much for listening. And if you like, you can reach out and talk to us on socials. We're available at Facebook at History in Retrograde. We are available on Gmail at historyinretrograde@gmail.com, and on Instagram at Retrograde Podcast. And if you like what you hear, there's a link to our PayPal account, where if you have anything that you'd like to give, we would definitely appreciate it. It would help us get better equipment and grow the show. So I think in conclusion, as long as your houses are in order and the stars are aligned, everything will be just fine.
It'll all be just fine. And we'd really love to hear from you. Please email us. We will definitely read them. And we are looking forward to what you have to say and any suggestions you might have for Chandler to do all of the research on a historical figure. And I know I enjoy doing every chart we do, so I'm very excited to see what you might have to offer. And please tell your friends about us. And we really, really, really appreciate you listening to the show, maybe watching it soon. And we just thank you. Thank you very much. And happy holidays.
Absolutely. Happy holidays. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Salile Creek Studio.